Ferrari is bringing a big upgrade package to Imola, and before that happened, the Ferrari team tested their full package at their Fiorano test track. It seemed to work really well for the team. If their original hopes are about to come true, then we're going to see a very fast SF-24 car in one of their 2 home races. But Red Bull is bringing upgrades too, and McLaren is stealing attention with 2 upgraded cars. Could we be in for an amazing race that Ferrari would win in front of their home crowd? It's safe to say that the entire F1 world will be watching Ferrari's upgrades closely at Imola. What's even more important is that the team understood what they needed to do. That's why they did a 100-kilometer test for both of their drivers at Fiorano to see where the upgrades would take the car. Even though this was called illegal by many F1 experts, or at least a tiny loophole that Ferrari managed to find, the process was watched by an FIA representative. The 200 kilometers in total that both drivers ran through Fiorano also included testing mud flaps on the wheels. This seems to be a long shot of an upgrade for the sport in the future. The feedback that came from both drivers was pretty positive. The big steps forward with these upgrades compared to the SF-23 were easy to notice from the very first lap of the Fiorano test. This was one of the biggest problems that Ferrari had in the past. They couldn't get much performance from their upgrades because they didn't understand them as well as Red Bull or even McLaren. McLaren's working team turned their luck around in the first wave of upgrades in 2023, and now they're a real threat for the second place and even first place seats in both championships. This time, though, luck seems to be smiling on the Ferrari team, mostly because Fiorano is a track where Ferrari can test lots of things they need to see if they're good enough to beat Red Bull's dominance. But what's also worth noting is that they can only collect a small amount of data, which is why Leclerc tried to keep expectations low, especially because of the tire heating problem that we'll talk about later in the video. Even so, Ferrari figured out something very important from their upgrades. The connection they had in the simulator and the plans they had for the cars actually worked. This means that the planned 0.3 of a second that the car was expected to deliver would very likely become real. Even though Red Bull is pretty confident about the second part of their own upgrades, this is very likely to be the bigger talking point of the Imola Grand Prix. The testing, however, gave some bad news about the heating of the tires, which was expected since the setup of the car still needs to be improved. Given Ferrari's amazing performance in Japan, one of the most tire-demanding tracks on the calendar, it's safe to say that this wouldn't be a big problem to solve. The effectiveness of the package, however, would have to wait until Imola is fully tested because even though the speed is there, we've seen many times that despite the raw performance of the car, there are lots of other things we should look at when competing for race wins, like the setup of the cars and how well the drivers perform. This is where Verstappen is in a league of his own. If you compare his results to those of Perez, you'll see that there's a huge difference that comes mostly from his ability to get the maximum potential out of the car. This is why Leclerc has been very critical about the setup of the car and the small steps that the team needs to take in the right direction. Talking about this matter, Leclerc said, "I'm sure that in Imola we will have a better race by putting everything together. We know that many have brought updates to these races, but we finished ahead. We are at the point of development of the car where if you bring something, it's not a matter of seconds, but of tenths. Without a doubt, we will be able to fight for victory in Imola, but I believe there is a gap that changes from track to track and from tire compound to tire compound, which makes more of a difference than an update. We must focus on the job, which is making the most of what we have. The update that we will bring to Imola will certainly help, but it doesn't all depend on that. It depends on the work that we will do on the track." It goes without saying that Ferrari has lots of plans for the rest of the season, mostly because they established themselves as the second fastest team on the grid without any upgrade packages added to the car. Based on a couple of setup changes, the Ferrari team has kept high hopes for their fans. Now, with the first upgrade package in Imola, both Leclerc and Sainz stated high hopes that they will be able to wipe out the advantage that Red Bull has gained in the first couple of races. In the season, the package itself is pretty big if you look at it. The new front entrances, an entirely new floor and side pod inlet, combined with getting rid of the bypass duct, show that the team is truly bringing an evolved version of their car. The new floor of the car will let them get as much performance as possible through the current rule era. But what Ferrari has struggled with a lot in the past was tire management and keeping up the pace throughout the entire race, which is something they've made a great step towards thanks to the great understanding they've been able to get from the stable platform that the SF-24 gave them. What seems to be a big plus for Ferrari is that both of their drivers are pretty competitive, which could come as a negative thing if they're not able to control their emotions and fight for a better position on the track. Definitely Sainz does not have anything to lose and will try to put lots of pressure on Leclerc, due to his future hanging in the air beyond Ferrari's contract that is ending in 2024. But after all, the Monaco driver does seem to be the more collected and calm driver when the car is at its best, which has been proven in the past couple of races. All in all, the competition will become very interesting because 0.3 of a second is not a small amount of performance. Right now, if Red Bull's upgrades do not bring the pace that they expect them to, it would effectively mean that Ferrari would be the fastest team on the grid, with McLaren also being a great threat to the championship fight. Even though this would be a really good scenario for us to watch, the comments coming from Red Bull are pretty positive. When talking about the upgrades that would be put on the RB20 in Imola, which are the second part after the process started. In Suzuka, Helmut Marko added, "I'm not worried about McLaren being a threat in the championship. Norris is more than 50 points behind. Besides, we are bringing an upgrade to Imola, which I expect a lot from." There is, however, one comment that Adrian Newey has added about the RB20, which does give us something to think about when it comes to having a competitive season in 2024. Talking about the RB20 and whether or not there is something that he would change on the car, the British mastermind from Red Bull went on to say, "There is always room for improvement. The car is the third evolution of the 2022 car under this rule set. We've got one more year next year until the huge change in 2026. We are always searching for little bits and pieces. The fundamental architecture of the car stays the same. For instance, there is one feature on the car that I'm not terribly happy with this year. It's something that will either change this year or be changed next year. But with McLaren also coming with 2 fully upgraded cars in Imola, it would be very interesting to see whether we will have a proper 6-man fight for the race win. Even though the story remains the same, the Dutchman is the favorite and the one that has to be beaten. Unless the Red Bull upgrades did not give them enough performance as expected, it would very well mean the beginning of the end of the 2024 championship. With this in mind, do you think that Ferrari's upgrades will turn out to be a true game changer for the rest of 2024? And more importantly, do you think they will be enough to beat Red Bull? Let us know in the comments below, and once you do that, make sure to check out the video that's appearing on your screen right now.